Okay.
Make up your mind, parents.
Okay, so to continue from yesterday's action-packed daf, so something that we didn't really have time to discuss. So we left off that you don't have to do hashavas aveda to a guy, right? That's one thing, and you're even allowed to fool a guy hafkaz halvavas, hafkaz halvas, right? You're allowed to try and get out of halva. And then also we said that when it's in a din, in a bezdin, on the bottom of Ralph, we said that when it's in a bezdin that's a little crooked, so you're allowed to, as long as you don't make a chilul Hashem, you're allowed to weasel your way out of paying, however it is that you're going to do it. So on this, there's a famous me'iri that everybody quotes in a Yam Shel Shloima that says that that's all in the old courts where, kangaroo courts, isn't that what they call it? Kangaroo courts?
Yeah.
Or those type of things where it was like the Wild West or whatever. But nowadays they say that we have governments that are officially yashrus and all that, then no shtick is allowed. Right?
And we believe that? I'm saying we believe that there's
so that's the thing. Right? Meaning, the Aruch HaShulchan seems to say it also. That nowadays that they're biyashrus, so then it's okay. Then now the Aruch HaShulchan also says, I think he says it in a parentheses, I couldn't remember what simon he says it, but he says that it could be that there's no din mesira nowadays. There are rabbanim that go with this, that it could be there's no din mesira nowadays if the hold that the courts are yashrus, because they're going to take care of they're saying they do things, there's the checks and balances officially, etc. And Mamela, you can trust what they're doing. I personally, I don't know what the courts nowadays, from what I understand from people, from my own experience, is that they're terrible. They are absolutely terrible. So I don't know what to do with that. I really don't know what to do with that. But that's what the Aruch HaShulchan says on the Meiri, etc. Fine. So continue. We're at the two dots. At least my Gemara has the two dots. It's 4 wide lines up on Kuf Yud Gimel on the base. That's we just left off by saying you don't have to do a Shavas Aveda for a guy. Right? Tani Rapinchas Ben Yor I was trying to fit this into the Rapinchas Ben Yor is the one that the whole Mesilas Yesharim is based on. Right? This, what is it? How many madregas? Reason, how does it go? Whatever, that whole reason. The Gemara Navay Dazar. Whatever it is. So here he says.
Where is it?
4 lines before they get wide.
Before they get wide. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Before they get wide.
Thank you.
Yeah, so Tanya Rapinchas Yoram, Welcome Sheyesh Chilul Hashem, Afilu Avedase Yasura, Afilu Avedase Aser. If it's a Chilul Hashem, right? Then meaning people are going to say, oh, the Yidden found it, but they never returned it. So then you have to, then it's awesome, right? So I wonder nowadays, this comes up every once in a while. I don't know, for some reason in Costco, once in a while, people by the carts leave things. I guess there's a lot of items in the cart. I don't know. Whatever. You find something in a cart in a shopping center, right? So you just take. I mean, the din is somebody lost it. It's a guy. You could just take it. The only problem now is video cameras, right? Let's say the guy comes to Costco, the security, and says, I left something there, and a guy would be cheap enough to spend all this time doing this. See, a Yid would just say farfalin, what is it, $20, $30, whatever, right? I think most Yidden would just say farfalin. But somebody comes to security and says, I know what time I left, let's say 2:30, and they go to the video camera, and at 2:35, they see a nice Yid come, pick the box up, put it into his car, and zagazont. Right? I think that's a mutzi thing to happen. Same thing, truth is now anywhere where you have it. So I don't know how that works. Right? I'm not sure.
We actually get a lot of calls for this about people that something was lost in front of their house or by a store, and they ask us to get the video footage. And usually we're able to figure out who it is.
Okay, so there you go. So there's a proof. Right? Yeah. So wasn't there a video of a guy who dropped some dollars and was videoing people and see who returned it and who didn't? There was once like a prank.
There's a lot of these videos.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a little scary to just keep these things nowadays. Nowadays everything is video. So I don't know what you do with that. Okay. So Shmuel said to Usai Muteris, right? This is the big one also. This is if he made a mistake, then it's mutter. You don't have to fix his mistake. Now we have a few maisim here. If you heard the Shmuel Zavan Mikusi, so Shmuel bought from Mikusi Lakna de Dava. He bought a bowl, a gold bowl, Bimar de Parzala, right? From instead of a parzala is a copper bowl, whatever, a cheaper copper, iron, whatever, different type of metal bowl. The dalit zuzi for 4 zuz, right? So the guy made a mistake. So chad zuza, and what Shmuel did is he put in 1 more zuz. I mean, he paid 5 zuz instead of 4 zuz, right? So what's a pshat that he did this? He did this because in case he gets caught, so Mamela will say, well, I paid you more than the regular rate, so therefore it would not be a chilul Hashem. But he didn't return it. He did not tell the guy about it. Right? Then there's another story. Rav Kahana Zavan Mikusi Meya ve'esem chavisa b'meya. He bought 120 barrels for 100. Ve'ivla leichad zuzah. And he also put in 1 more zuz. Yeah. So Amarle, and he said to the Kusi, Chazi da Allah kasamichna, and he said, I'm relying on you. Meaning normally when somebody gives you cash, so you count it yourself too. Right? Just to make sure it's the right amount. So let's say you got cash from a guy and you counted and you realize he put in too much cash. So now you're allowed to keep it. So what you could do is you tell him, by the way, I'm not counting it, and I'm just relying on you, and like this, then it's not a problem. Now the shaila is this a chiyuv to say this, or he was just doing it to avoid chilul Hashem? So in the Shulchan Aruch, there's different shitas or whether you're mechuyev to say this or not. Like this, if you say it, then there's less of a problem. All right? Okay, so it's debatable. Ravina Zovan Dikla hu bekusi l'tzalacha. So Ravina bought a dekel, him and a kusi and l'tzalacha in order to use it like for wood. Amalei l'shamei. So he told the shamas, Kodem v'aisi meikare. You go and take our portion of it from the ikar of the tree, from the bottom, which are much, Rashi says, which are thicker pieces. We'll get our money's worth. The kusi minyana because the kusi just counts it. He just counts pieces, the kusi. He doesn't care about the sizes of the pieces. So this is a classic situation where a yid is taking advantage of the guy. The guy's clueless, right? He's just splitting pieces, like 1 for you, 1 for me, and he doesn't care about the size. And the yid says, 1 second, if I take from the bottom of the tree, I get a much bigger size. So that's
Is this Tosakum or Matakum?
The last case sounds like he's Well, he's not making him make the mistake, but he's doing a shtick, right? I don't. Either way,
According to Rashi, all of these cases are Mata.
what I mean, they're all mata. Yeah, okay, I hear that, but that's sort of like of course of us, right? Either way, as we mentioned, the Beragoyla in Shin Mem Ches in Choshen Mishpat says that these, even though the halacha may say that you're allowed to, it shouldn't be done. And many people that made money off of Ta'is Akum ended up losing their money. So you gotta tread lightly when doing these shticks. Fine. Ravashi have a ka'azil ba'orcha. Ravashi was traveling. He saw a branch from a grapevines, and then there was a cluster of grapes hanging from it. Amalei l'shamis, he told the shamas, zil chazi itakusi ninu icy. If it's a guy's field, take it and bring it to me. Idi Yisrael ninu loy icy. But if it's a yid's, don't bring it to me, right? Because otherwise it's stealing. It sounds like he's telling you if it's a guy's property, so then you could just steal. Shamahu kusi to have a yasub paradisa. So, but the kusi was listening and he heard this in the pardes. Amalei, he told Ravasi, the kusi shari, you're going to steal from a kusi? Amalei said, no, Kusi shakel the me Yisrael dami. I'm sorry, a Kusi will take money. Yisrael loy shakel dami, but a Yid won't take money from me. Meaning, if it's a guy, so now I'm going to take it and I'm going to go knock on your door and pay for it. But a Yid is not going to take money from me, so I'd rather take from a guy.
Because he's Ravashi?
That's what I thought. I have two questions that I wasn't understanding. It sounded to me like, yeah, it's Ravashi. Nobody wants to take it from him. Meaning nobody wants to take money from him. But then is this thing, I mean, it has to be that that's legit what he planned on doing. Because otherwise that's straight Geneva Sakum. Right? I'm saying, what was the Gemara bringing this story for? This is not tricking an Akum, as far as I know. It's stealing straight up. Right?
What's stealing? He was intending to pay the whole time.
No. Meaning, let's say the owner had not heard him.
He was Art Scroll teaches it that his intention from the beginning was to pay. If it's a guy, I'm going to pay, and if it's a Jews, I'm not taking it because they're not going to let me pay. So then the guy actually, but he didn't verbalize it. That's what he was thinking it.
Right, but that's where did they get that from?
Tosfos? Because it's also to steal from a guy, so of course he was thinking that.
What I'm saying, that's true. So it's not just that he did this as to what do you call it, the save face, right? That was his intention the whole time.
That's what they're saying from Tosfos, yes.
So, but I don't understand what. So why is the Gemara bringing the story? The Gemara is talking about Toy Sakum now, not Geneva. This is straight Geneva, right? You go take a guy's clusters from a field, unless you say it was hanging. Can we say that it was hanging into the public property and he was taking it down because it was blocking? No, it doesn't. It says a mashma like that. No, it doesn't say it was hanging in the public thoroughfare. I don't know. I wasn't sure what the Gemara wanted with this story. Okay. Gufa.
I thought it was going back on Gezel Akum.
You think it's going back?
Because Gezel Akum is not Gzela the way we see it. It's not like Sigla. It's a whole new pasuk. It's not a mitzvah or an avera. It's a halacha midiraisa. So the gazel to take from a yid with intention to pay later is called gzela, but from a guy that's not gzela.
Yeah. Well, okay. I hear. Okay, bye. The Gufa Amar Shmuel Dina de Machusa Dina. Again, we're going back to Dina de Machusa Dina. Amar Rava, very interesting proof. Teda. Rava says, how do we know we say Dina de Machusa Dina? The Katli Dikli, the Gishri Gish, the Goshri Gishri, they cut down people's trees. Right? What do you call it? Eminent domain? What is it called? Eminent domain, right? They can go just take stuff from anybody. And they build bridges, and we use the bridges. So if we hold that, if we don't hold a dina de machusa dina, so then the government came and stole trees. So then it's stolen property. We're not allowed to use it. Tell them that we use these bridges. Must be we hold dina de machusa dina. So Abaya said, who says? Maybe the owners, once these trees were cut down, they know they have no chance fighting the government, and they were meyayish. So once they're meyayish, as we've been learning, so then it's no problem. So
The government pays for eminent domain.
True, that is true. They do pay for eminent domain, but I guess back then they didn't.
Yeah, but now they do.
Yeah, now because it's like we were just saying, the governments are more yashers officially nowadays, right? So either way, it sees meyayish.
This Abaya Lishitase, Yish Kadikami.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. Years would be kind. Yeah. 100%.
He's asking on Shmuel, who doesn't necessarily hold Yish.
Very good. Good ha'ara. That's a good ha'ara. Very nice. Yeah. So Abaya said maybe they're miyayish. The Gemara says, Eloi dina de machusa dina hechem miyashi. If it wouldn't be for dina de machusa dina, why would they be miyayish? Meaning, yish is not. He's answering him that yish is not enough, right? It has to be a shina rishus or a shina shame, whatever it is. It has to be a shina in addition to the yish, and you're not going to have that. So the Gemara says, then the Gemara says stuff. So Abaya says, but the people cutting down the trees don't necessarily listen to the melech, to the king. Because the king wants to spread the cost, right? So he wants them to take from different neighborhoods. And they go and they cut it from one place, which means that they're only because they're too lazy to go around. All right, so they just go to one place. So then that's weiter geneva. So when it's a shluch of the malka, kamalka v'loy torah. It's a shliach of the melech, and he's not going to be matriach himself. All right, but what's going to be is that they're going to get their payment from the other neighborhoods. And they don't go to the other people, then they're going to lose their chaylik. Meaning, it's understood that yes, the tree cutters are supposed to go to different neighborhoods, but they just go to one neighborhood and knock it all down. So what's supposed to happen is that the other neighborhoods are supposed to go to the neighborhood. The neighborhood that got cut down is supposed to go to the other neighborhoods and say, okay, you have to reimburse us. If they didn't do that, then it's their own fault, right? Okay, I don't know. This is medieval politics here that we're talking about, but fine. So the boilahu, right? The boilu the inkat mikule bagi mishkal dami, because they should have gone and taken from the other places and taken money. They should have. That's what they should have done, and they didn't do it. So it's their own problem.
Is Icky on by any chance or no? It's still Shabbos by him.
Yes, it's still Shabbos.
Okay.
Yeah. So Amar Rava, man de mishtaka for beidari para manosa de malka. So here is if a guy is found by the beidari, by the granary, right? So then he pays the mana of the king. Meaning, Rashi says what happened here is you have like a few partners in a granary, and the two partners already came and took their grain and left. And then the last guy, right, the early bird gets the worm. So the two guys left and they weren't taxed. Then the tax collector comes and the third guy's the only one there. So he has to pay all the taxes. And for the other two guys also, and then he can go back and take it from the other ones. But that's only if they're shutfin. But if he was only a sharecropper, then the sharecropper is not an owner. So right, so it's only the one his boss's chalik that he has to give, but that's it. mean, he could tell them, listen, I'm not. That's not. I'm not giving you their portion. They have nothing to do with me. Meaning, the first case is talking about where they were all partners. But he's also a partner, so he should give his chelik, and then he'll go collect it from the other partners. Otherwise, not. Bar masa, aber masa mi avet. Right, it's the same thing. A person who lives in the town, he can go. They can go take money from somebody else in the town. Bahani mili the barla the burla arava karga the hashata. That's only where it's the burla arav the karga the hashata, meaning it's the tax for this year. I mean, there's two taxes. There's the land tax, and then there's the karga tax. I don't know what. How do you touch that? Is that the tax for each individual person, right? That's
So
this
the head tax, a head tax.
a head tax. Isn't there? I'm saying there's a more common word for that type of tax nowadays. Not income tax. It's the first one is real estate tax, right? Or whatever. The ARA is real estate tax, and this is, I don't know. I guess head tax, individual tax. But it's only for this year. But for the past year, once the king was, they were mafias him, they satisfied him, then that's it. It's gone. Right? So you can't go taking taxes paid from one person for another person. Fine. Hani the dari. So these people that they do field fertilization. Right? So Rashi says it's a goy. So basically what they do is he has traveling animals. He feeds them. They go to the bathroom all over a guy's field, and that ends up putting zevel all over the field. So these guys, besides hatchum also likach mehen, you're not allowed to take from them the animals because we're afraid that they ended up ripping off somebody else's animal while doing this. My time because they end up mixing up animals from that town with their animals. But if it's outside the tchum, it's mutter. Right? Why? Because we're going to assume that an animal from the city is not going to end up going with them outside the tchum. But Ravina says, but if you see an owner is running after these guys, this traveling field fertilizers, and he's running after them, so then don't take an animal from them because it could very well be that one of the animals belongs to this guy that's chasing. Fine. The Salkan Leilo, the Nasan Latata, those going up to Eretz Yisrael and those coming down from Eretz Yisrael to Bavel, right, should know that Hai Ba Yisrael the other Sadusa Lakusi Veloy Tavamine. Right, so this gets to what we were discussing before about the courts nowadays. So you have a Bar Yisrael that knows Eidos for a Kusi, but he didn't ask him to testify. He didn't ask him. And he goes and he testifies in a non-Jewish court on a fellow Yid. We put him into Cherem. Right? Why? Because they have different laws. Right? In Eid Echad, and is they believe in Eid Echad, we don't believe in Eid Echad. Right? Fine. Shaila is it lav dafka testifying in a court against a yid? Sounds like here it's only a problem to testify in court against a yid, but a guy it would be okay. Right? Or I mean, it's much a few things. Why is the Gemara saying guy here? And if you go to court and you testify for yourself against another yid, that's okay. That's also not okay. Right?
That's why I was looking for Icky.
Oh yeah, why?
For the Satma brothers.
Oh, because they went to courts.
Yeah.
Right, so they went to courts against each other. That's a big shiloh. How can you do that? But meaning, you can bring this right. The Gemara, you can bring this Gemara as a raya that it's okay because it says it's only for a guy. But the Mefarshim say that that's not the case. It's going to a Goyish court for anything, right? Okay, my timer. What's the reason? Inu mafkim mamayna, because they take out money on top of that. Now we start today's stuff. We gotta keep moving up. Puma dechad. They'll use a dechad. We obviously what?
So you're not allowed to sue anyone?
It's a big shaila. Yeah, you really have to go to Yiddish courts first. If the Yiddish courts can't do anything, then you could go to the non-Jewish courts. Yeah,
What if it's not the person that's getting sued, it's the insurance company?
That's a whole different story. If that's the way you're supposed to do it.
We had a student at work that the father by mistake closed the door of the car on the mother's hand, so she sued him. Happily married people, because it wasn't the person getting sued, it was the insurance company.
Right. So that's a big thing. So that's okay.
Happens to be they were both lawyers, but a little different.
Yeah, so that's part of it, right? Fine, that's only if he's only an eid echad, but if it's two, if you have two eidim, then it sounds like it's mutter. Right? I mean, see, that's another shver thing, right? Because you're still going to a goyish court, right? Why are you going to a goyish court? No. Well, the truth is, he's not the one going to court here. He's just being the aid. You're not really discussing that he's him initiating the court case. He's just going as a witness. So if there are two witnesses, then it would be okay, because even according to Yiddish law, it's fine. Fine. That's only in these small courts, right? The local courts. But in a big court, right? They're gonna they only use one aid to Rashi says they're not gonna take money away from somebody with one aid. They'll be mechayev shvua, mamash like din Torah. They'll be mechayev shvua with an aid echad. So since the big city courts go with that, then you would be allowed to testify there. Amar Ravashi, Ki Havina be Rav Huna. When I was by Rav Huna, he asked us, Adam Chashuv Samchi Alev Kebei Trey. So the Goyim, for an Adam Chashuv, they rely on him like Beit Trey. Do we say that if he goes by himself to say Eidus, they're going to trust him? So therefore he should not go say Eidus. He's not going to be able to get out of it, and he's allowed to say Eidus. So that's a loaded question also. Meaning here, he can't get out of it because he's an Adam Chashuv, and it could cause a real ruckus that you have a Chashuv, a person, not testifying in court. So what's the shaila? Should he go? Should he not go? So the Gemara says Teiku. Right? Yeah, and the Mefarshim say the Pais can say that he in this Teiku, because whenever you have a Teiku, you go L'chumra. Shaila is which way is L'chumra here? Right, here L'chumra is a little bit of a issue. L'chumra is to testify or not to testify. Right? So the Maisa, the Pais can say that you should testify. That would be the Chumrah. Fine. Amar Rav Ashi, Hi Bar Yisrael, Dezavan Araloi v'Kachavim Al Mitzvah de Bar Yisrael Chaver. Common case here. You have a Yid who sells his property to a guy that borders on a Yid's. Right? Meaning there's a guy selling his house and he wants to sell it to a guy. He sells it to a guy. So Mashamsina that we put him into Chayrim. Now my time. He named Mashum Dina de Bar Mitzvah. If you say it's because of Dina de Bar Mitzvah, which Dina de Bar Mitzvah is basically that the neighbor gets first dibs on a house. He doesn't get a discount. You have to sell it to him for the same price you'd sell it to somebody else, but the neighbor gets first dibs on a house, as long as it's mamish bordering on that property. So if
It's
that's
Chutz Laretz or Eretz Yisrael?
what,
Even in Chutz Laretz? Are they
Far as
talking
I know-
about in
yeah,
Bavel?
as far as I know, even in Chutz La'aretz, yeah,
It's Lawrence, yeah.
it comes up. It comes up, with people selling houses. So the bar mitzvah, it says you're allowed to. You're allowed to sell to an akum, and you're allowed to sell from it. Or you're allowed to buy from an akum. Right? That go mishum dina de bar mitzvah because there's no bar mitzvah. Right? Meaning when you're buying from a guy, and the yid screaming, "I want to buy the house. It's my neighbor." Right? So you can't. You can't have that taina when the neighbor is a guy. Because why does the neighbor want it? He say, I don't want a guy in my property. The guy's great. I'm a yid. I'm buying it. I'm getting him out of there. Oh, he said, yeah, but I'll buy it. He says, yeah, but who said you'd be successful in getting it from the guy? That's one way. And for the guy, and the guy is selling, right? It doesn't apply because the din of the bar mitzvah is not a chiyuv on the seller. It's a chiyuv on the buyer. The buyer is not allowed to buy it. So the buyer here is a guy. So it's not the issue. Okay, so basically he's not going to chayrim because of it's a bar mitzvah issue. So what is it? El amrina lei arboisli arye yamatzray. You put a, I think arbois is from the word reveya, like he's going to be living a lion on my boundary, meaning you put a guy next to me, right? So Mamela Meshamsina le ad the Kabbalah le kol ein to the asim machmasei. He was, so basically we put him into chayrim until he says that and if this guy does any sort of damage, the guy that sold the property to the guy is out. Meaning that he has to pay for it. Meaning, let's say the guy does damage to the yid's house, and then the one that sold the property to the guy is going to have to accept on himself all damages. Now, what happens if the guy just makes a lot of noise on Shabbos, Yom Tov, and it's not really anything damaging? I have no idea. I have no idea how you do that, right? And it's pashut that this is all talking about where the yid offers the same price as the guy. That the yid selling the property to the guy is certainly not required to take a loss to sell it to another yid. That the Mefarshim say, right? I had a situation with a guy who he fixed the house in like a quasi good bad neighborhood, and he couldn't get the money. He couldn't get the money from the yidden to rent. He was looking to rent it. He couldn't get the money because you have the Mexicans that move in multiple families. Right, and he said that's going to get me the money I want, and he couldn't get a yid to rent for that, so he wanted to rent for that price, and the yidden said no, they're not giving him that price, so they wanted to put him into cherem, this and that. I told him, listen, if he can make the money, you got to pay up. Which I tell you, just because you want to save yourself $500 doesn't mean. I mean, avada, he should want to give it to a yid, but he's not mechuyev to take a loss because you don't want this going on. Right? You're not mechuyev to. Anyways, yeah, fine. Talk the Mishnah, yeah. Notlu Meichsin as chamoyre v'nosla. So continuing on the Meichsin. So we said in the previous Mishnah that tax collectors are considered dishonest, and we said in the Gemara there, dina the machus dina. We said it's talking about where they have wherewithal to do whatever they want, right? So, but that was by cash. But what about if the tax collector comes and takes a chamor? He comes to take a donkey, and then he gives the guy back a different donkey, right? Meaning he took a donkey from him, and then he felt terrible, so he said, "Okay, here's a different donkey back. So now you're allowed to take it or not? Is it stolen?" So here you're allowed to take it, even though we said by the money you can't take it. A donkey you can't take it. Not who listed as ksusai. So if the armed robbers came and took his clothing, but not ksus acher, and then they had rachmanis and they gave him ksus acheres, another clothing, he could take it. Why? Because the owners were meyayish, meaning they thought they're never getting it back, so you don't have to worry. And you have to say that by the money they were not meyayish. Right? Hamatzalman and Ahar. If you save something from a river, I'm in a gaius, from an army, I'm in a listim from armed robbers. If the Bailam were miyayish, then he could keep it. Right? And the same thing if you have a what do you call it? Nechil shel devarim is
Beehive.
a beehive, right? A beehive that went into somebody else's property. Right? So if he was miyayish harelu shaloi, they belong to him because the guy was miyayish of ever getting back his bees. A woman and a katan are believed to say that this beehive came from this and this person's property, right? And then the guy has to give it back, even though normally a woman and a katan are not believed. But for this, we believe them. The Gemara is going to say why. Not only that, but a person can go into his neighbor's field in order to collect his bees that escaped. But if he damaged his neighbor's field or whoever's field he goes to, then he pays what he damaged. We're going to see in the Gemara, we had this Gemara a while ago, that when you're allowed to do things, you're allowed to use somebody else's property in order to save yours. Right? But you should not cut down an entire branch on the condition that you pay the guy for the branch, meaning all your bees fly into somebody else's rishus. The problem is, the Rashi says, is that if you go take bee by bee, then the other bees are going to escape. So the easiest way to do it is just chop down the whole branch and then put it back into your property. But now you're ruining the guy's tree, so you're allowed to do that. He could even cut it off and then pay for it. Right? See, the first sheet that says you cannot cut it off. The second sheet that says you are allowed to cut it off. Fine. So Zok the Gemara, Tana, im Natal, let's say you did take the donkey, then you have to give it back to the owner, which is different than our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says you're allowed to keep it. And he's saying that you have to give it back because Sabar Yish Kidi like Kana. He says that Yish by itself, that doesn't make a kinyan. And he took it from the beginning, because it was, even if he was miyayish, it's just Yish. Right? Fine. So that's one way. And some say if he wants to give it back, he should give it back to the first owners, not whoever owned it in between. But he doesn't have to. Meaning the first price says he has to. The second one says he can. And if he does, and both of them say you go give it back to the original owner. What's the reason? Yish kadi kani. Yish by itself is kain. But if he's a tzaddik and he says, I'm not interested in using something that doesn't belong to me, so he gives it back to the original owners. Right? Meaning don't give it back to the tax guy, give it back to the original guy who the tax guy took it from. Fine. So we say it belongs to him because the bailim are miyayish. This is only talking about armed robbers that are goyim. But if it's listim that are yid, then we believe that the yid, the one that got stolen from, is not miyayish. Savar again, armed robbers, he knows who they are. So he says, okay, we'll bring him to Bezdin and we'll get the money back from him. Meaning if it's a guy, so there's no way he's going to be able to do anything with that. But if it's a yid, then he should be able to. So Maskal Rabbi Yosef, it's the opposite. Akum, the daini, the geisei lo miyayish. Akum, who they done with how do you call it? The gisi, force. You mean they enforce, meaning a court. You don't start up with a Goyish court. They're going to come after you and they're not going to forget about it. But Yisrael, Kivan Da'amri, Meimar, Miyayish, but since a Yiddish court, all they do is say things, they don't have a way to enforce it, which is unfortunate because nowadays for sure that's the case. Then he's Miyayish, the Yid's Miyayish. Who cares that goods of the Yiddish court said he's chayav? They have no power. That's Rashi's first shot. Rashi has a second shot because Meimar Amri Meimar is by the Yiddish court, they're going to make the guy come and give Edus. Right? He's going to have to say Edus in order to prove with two Edim that the stuff was stolen. A Goyish court is not. Those are the two different pshatim. So Eli Iyatman, I'm sorry. What am I doing? Right, so that's a kasha, meaning he's saying fakir. I mean, we were saying that he's miyayish when it's Yidden, it's Jewish armed robbers, right? Because that was what the Gemara said. He's miyayish when it's goyim, but by Yidden he's not miyayish because he'll take him to Bezdin. But Yosef is saying fakir. A Yiddish Bezdin, there should be much less hope. They're much less effective, according to Rashi's first shot. They're much well. They're both. In both pshatim, they're less effective. Rashi's first shot is less effective because Yiddish courts don't enforce things physically. Goyish courts do, or Yiddish courts make you testify in person. Fine. So Eli Itmar, so no. So we're going to say change pshat. Sefer Itmar, it's going on the Sefer. Hamatzim and Akum and listim. If you save something from Akum and listim, in Nisyashu Abailim in. If the Bailim are Miyayish, then you get to keep it. Stam Allah, but if you don't know if the Bailim were Miyayish, then you don't keep it. And Loishanu Ela Akum, but that's only by a guy. Bishum the Daini Begisi, because they judge with force. But listim Yisrael, given the Amri Meimar, right? Since the Amri Meimar, since again Rashi has two pshatim, then Miyayish, they are Miyayish. So now the Gemara asks, what's that? The Gemara brings another machlokes here. Right? Tanan Hasam, Irish Shabalabai. So we know that for something, in order for a kli to become tummy, it has to be created with the das to have in mind that it's a kli. Right? So if it's a balabayas and he makes it into a kli and he decides it's a kli, so then he's the owner, so then that becomes, it has the yechilas now and the possibility to become tummy. But if it's a store owner, so they can change their mind all the time. So it's just because they make a kli or they think that they're making it a kli, doesn't mean anything because they could change their minds. If another customer comes in and they could change it. So Irish of balabayas, the leather skins or whatever of a balabayas, mashav matamasan, just thinking about it makes them tummy. Vishal avdon, but if it's a avdon, ain't mashav matamasan, then the mashav is not matama. Because just because he thought he's going to make it a face into a pitcher doesn't mean that he might not change his mind and do something else. Shall Gazlan, but let's say a Gazlan, meaning somebody stole the leather from somebody else and he decides to make it into a kli. Ein machshava matamas, and the machshava is not matama, because Rashi says because it's not his, right? Mishal Ganev. So because a Gazlan is straight out, so he knows who stole it from him. So the owner is not miyayiv, so therefore it doesn't belong to the Gazlan. But Shal Ganev machshava matamasan, but the machshava is matama. No, it's the opposite. Shal Gazlan machshava matamasan. The Gazlan is machshava matama. Shal Ganev ain't machshava matamasan. But a Ganev not. Why? Because the Bailam didn't give up. Right. So we have a machlokes. Which Geneva Gizela? Which one will cause more yush? Right, and it's totally in. Well, if the guy's already hiding, he's a Ganev, so he's scared of Bezdin. And so if the guy thinks, okay, I'm going to catch him, and then he's going to be scared of Bezdin. Mashenkin, the Gazlan doesn't care. He's not scared of Bezdin, or the opposite. Okay, so then that's a basic machlokes whether a Gazlan or a Ganev is a problem, is more of a yush or not. Some ula machlokes the stam. Machlokes is which we're not sure, meaning we don't know is this guy miyayish or not. So we have machlokes avu yedua. But if you know, meaning if you know that the guy was miyayish, like in Shul, he says over the story, and then he says, I'm never going to recover it, then the guy is kaina, and then it will become tummy. And Rabba Amar, but you do a nami machlokes, and Rabba says, no, even if you know he was miyayish, it's still a machlokes. Right? Fine. So now we have a back and forth of a few similar kashas. Amalei Abayla Rabba. Like Sivlagala Ula, don't disagree with Ula. The Tanam I would say we have a Mishnah like Ula. Again, Ula holds that it's a machlokes if we don't know whether he was miyayish. But if you know that he was miyayish, then he is kind of. So he says we have a Mishnah like Ula, Lefisha Loinis Yashu Habaylim. Right? Because the Mishnah says that the Bailim were not Miyayish. So therefore, when the Ganav makes it into a Kli, his machshava doesn't work. The reason is that Bailim were not Miyayish. I want to say Yashu Bailim. If the Bailim were Miyayish, Arelu Shalek does go to him. So he said back to Manan Lefisha ain't Yush Lebailim Asnidinla. We learned Lefisha ain't Yush Lebailim. Right? Not Shaloi Nisyashu. He's saying because we know that there is no Yush. Right? Meaning Pshat is that we don't believe them. Even if they said there's a Yush, we don't believe them. From our Mishnah. It says if the tax collectors took his chamor, so money, who is it going like? Rabbanon Kashal Gazan. If it's a Rabbanon, right, who says that Yush is only by a Ganav, then you have a Kasha from a Gazlan, right? Because a tax collector is straight up, he's in your face, he's not hiding. And he Reb Shimon, and if it's saying the Mishnah is Reb Shimon, and that only by a Gazlan, then Kasha Ganav. Then you have a Kasha from a Ganav. Yes? Okay. All right, good talk. Sorry. So Bishlam Ula don't we do a Kani. So it's good according to Ula, who says that when you know about it, you kind of Hachanam, you do a Divrei Kol. So to here, it's all about where you know, and everybody holds. You know he's Miyayish, then he's Miyayish. Allah Rabba don't be doing Machlokes. But according to Rabba, who says that even when the guy says he's Miyayish, it's a Machlokes, how money? Who's the Tan of the Mishnah? Loy Rabbanim, Loy Reb Shimon. It's not Rabbanim, it's not Reb Shimon. So one answers, but list Mizuyin, Reb Shimon here. Tomar list Mizuyin, and it's going according to Reb Shimon. So when it says Yehochi Hainu Gazlan, that's a Gazlan. So we say Trey Gavni Gazlan. There's two types of Gazlanim, right? Meaning you have a guy that's a tax collector who's doing it in front of everybody, right? And then you have a Mr. Mizuyin, right, who also does it in front of anybody, but meaning since they're armed robbers, they're scared of people, so the only one that really knows about them is the one they stole from. Okay, so then Tashima, similar Shagavatari, a Ganav, a Gazav, a Anas. You have a Ganav, a Gazan, and an Anas is like a mafia. Right? He pays for it. Rashi says basically he forces you out, but he'll pay you for it. So Ekdesh and Hekdesh, they're when they make something hektish, it's hektish. Trumas and truma, and their trumas truma, masos and meiser, and it's meiser too, which means that we say that it becomes their property, right? Because it must be a year. Shemani Rabbanon, if it's Rabbanon Kasha Gazan, Reb Shimon Kasha Ganav. So same shagli. So Bishop Leula don't be do a kani. According to Ulu says that when we know he was miyayish and the kaina because it was yish hachanav be do but the very kali. It's Yidua and according to everybody. El Rabba, the Amar be Yidua now in Machlaikis, but according to Rabba, who also says be Yidua it's a Machlaikis, Hamani, who is it? Lai Rabban or Reb Shimon. It's not Rabban and Reb Shimon. So one answers, Hachanami be listed Mizuyin Reb Shimon. It's listed Mizuyin and it's going according to Reb Shimon. Yachi Hainu Gazlan. If that's the case, and it's a Gazlan. So we say Trey Gavni Gazlan. Two types of Gazlanim. Then the Gemara says a different type. So Viva is saying Hamasnisa Rebbe. We could say that the Brisa is Rebbe, right? And the Ganav is a real Ganav who hides, right? So then who's the Tana? But we're going to say that it's Rebbe. The Tanya Rebbe Omar Ganav Kigazlan. A Ganav is like a Gazlan on Tomei Beis now. The Kaimalon Kigazlan l'Reb Shimon, and we say that it's a Gazlan like Reb Shimon, right? So, okay, we have to see the Gemara right after that. So Gufa, so what does this mean? Gufa, Rebbe Aimer Ani, Ganav Kigazan. A Ganav is like a Gazan. So Yiboiluhu, Kigazan de Rabbanon. What does it mean? It means a Gazan de Rabbanon Kamar Veloy Kani, and he's not Kaina. Like the Rabbanon said on Amar Aleph, I don't Gazan de Reb Shimon Kamar. It's like a Gazan of Reb Shimon, and he is Kaina. So Tashima, so we have a price, and not the Moisen Chamoiroi. If the tax collectors take his donkey, so right then our mission of money. Yirabon and Kasha Gazan, Yirab Shimon Kasha Gazan. So what it says, Iyam Rabbi Shimon Rebbe Gazan the Reb Shimon Kamar Rakani. Hamani Revihi, Mishum Hachi Kani. Eliyam Kikazan the Rabbanon Kamma. Revi say it's a Kazan the Rabbanon. But like Kani is not Kana. Hamani Lo Reb Reb Shimon Lo Rabbanon. It's not any of these three sheetas. So Gemara again says Hakamai Askina, but list the Mizuyin Reb Shimon. He it's list the Mizuyin and Reb Shimon. So Gemara asks, say Hachi Hainu Gazlan. That's the same thing as Gazlan. Trey Gavni Gazlan, same to Gazlan. Now we have the Gemara twice again. Toshima, Aganav Agazan Ba'anas, Hekdesh and Hekdesh. Trumas and Truma, if they make it Hekdesh, it's Hekdesh, Trumas and Truma, Masos and Maisis and money, Irabon and Kasha Gazlan. Irab Shimon, Kasha Ganav. Iyam Bishlam Aganav Gazlan, the Rab Shimon Kamar, Shumhachi. Kani, that's why it's Kana. Eliyahu Ganav Gazlan the Rabbanon, Hamani, who was it? So again, we'll list the Mizoyim Rab Shimon. He Hachi Hainu Gazlan, Trey Gavni Gazlan. I'm sorry for going fast. I got to start the women's share in about a minute and a half. Yeah, 2 minutes. It's a repeat. It's all repeat. It's not talking about something that has achrayis. Right? We had this a couple of blot ago. That doesn't mean actual land. But even if it's a para and they plowed chamar or a chamar, and he's following after it, meaning he's using a chayim and lahasam, they covered aviyim, that they have to give back because of covered aviyim. So the Gemara says, "Time they covered aviyim." The only reason why they have to return the stolen property is because it's not respectful that they walk around using things, and everybody says, "Oh, that's the Yerusha from their father, the crook." Halav covered aviyim loy, but if it's not, it wouldn't be for covered aviyim. They wouldn't have to return it, right? So that means it becomes theirs with a yish and a shina rishus. Rebbe Gazan the Rab Shimon Kamar. So what we hear from this that it's Rebbe and it's a Gazan and the Gazan going to Rab Shimon, which is that the owner is miyayish, regardless of whether it's a Ganav or a Gazlan. So Shema Mino, that's taka what he means. Okay, we'll have to make this up tomorrow night, Bez Hashem. Let's just say Tillim. All right, Pei Gimel, Shim is Malosov.